So that's another one I have to add to my list.
Okay, my pen's ready for your next book.
Next book I have is called The Goal, and it's by Eliyahu Goldratt and Jeff Cox. And what The Goal is, it's a book about what's called the theory of constraints. It's actually written as a novel. So the story is about somebody trying to overcome these problems he's having at work. And what it talks about is the theory of constraints. And what that is that every process, everything you do basically has one weak point. And by working on that weak point, that's how you improve the entire system. Because no matter how strong or weak that weak point is, as the weakest part of your process, it's holding back the rest of the process. Now, it's used a lot in manufacturing, and the storyline follows the problems through a manufacturing plant. So when they're talking about the theory of constraints they're literally talking about a piece of machinery that's holding up an assembly line. But the theory itself works in any process, and you can apply it to your life, your work, because when you really examine what you're doing, there's usually one point that is holding up everything else, and that's determining the speed of your progress. And if you can work on that point and figure out how to overcome those constraints, you can achieve so much more.
You know what? I actually read that book back, I'm guessing late 80s, early 90s, back when we had our manufacturing plant. For those of you who don't know, I come from a manufacturing background. My grandfather started a plant out in Wisconsin that's still going strong. And they actually started reading the book out there. And the business itself is actually located down in New Haven, Connecticut. So they came out here for like a 2-week intensive goal workshop so they could put those principles into action at their plant. And we did that too in Connecticut. And basically what it does talk about, it's the theory of constraints, and there's always the one bottleneck that is slowing everything down, and you have to keep that bottleneck busy at all times and increase the capacity there, because everything else is not going to work without it. And it really was fascinating working on this thing. And I actually went to a couple-day seminar myself way back when. And so that is a fantastic book. And it is told in storybook fashion, but The Goal is something I highly recommend. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I think I read it originally about 10 years ago. It's been out for quite a while, but it definitely, if you haven't read it yet, it's a good read.
Absolutely. So the next one is actually one that we've discussed in our book reviews in the past. And this one is called The Energy Bus by John Gordon. It's 10 rules to fuel your life, work, your team with positive energy. And the way that I found out about this was 5-6 years ago, back when Brianna Stewart was a star at the University of Connecticut women's basketball team and won 4 national championships in a row and 4 Players of the Year in a row. #1 draft choice in the WNBA. When Sports Illustrated interviewed her, she said, "I'm not only bringing my talents to the Seattle Storm basketball team, I'm going to bring positive energy." And she referenced this book, The Energy Bus by John Gordon. And the story of this is a gentleman named George who's having a tough time at work and having a tough time at home and everything else, and is just way down on everything. And he's got a big product launch coming up at work that he's the manager for, and they're running into all kinds of problems. And he gets up one Monday morning and goes to his car, and there's a flat tire. At which time he remembers that his wife told him 6 months ago to get the flat that's right in the trunk repaired. So basically, he asks for a ride to work, and she says, "Take the bus." And he hops on the bus. And the very, very first day, there's this very positive gal on there that says, "Welcome to the Energy Bus." And he's saying, "Oh my God, what's this all about? Thank God I only have to do this for one day." Well, he takes the car in later that day and finds out that he would be in a crash if his brakes don't get fixed, because he ignored a recall 6 months ago. So the car's stuck 2 weeks. He has to ride the bus. And what this is about him coming around because of the positivity on the bus, bringing everything through work. And basically, they concentrate on 10 different principles. And at the end of the book, he actually has a very, very positive product launch, becomes a lot more positive person. The marriage is getting better and all kinds of other things. And it's just by putting energy into your life. And basically, the new title there is CEO, Chief Energy Officer. And there's 10 different rules to fuel the positivity. A couple of them are: you drive your own bus, you're 100% in charge. Desire, vision, and focus move you in the right direction. You have to fuel it with positive energy. In the management scenario, you have to invite people on your bus, share your vision, get them involved. Really, really important. No energy vampires allowed. These are the ones that suck all the life out of everything, and they need to be kicked off the bus. Drive with enthusiasm, love your passengers. It's a really, really fun book, the way that it's written. And he built a business out of this and actually teaches these principles to business. So if you actually get this book on Audible, again, it's the Energy Bus by John Gordon. He actually is the one who's telling the story on there. So the Energy Bus is something that really will help you out in the workplace, and it will help you out in life, because the bottom line is we could all use a whole lot more positive energy, and it's our choice to have it.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about positive mindset and having energy, and that's a great book for people to read to really help supercharge their own energy and see how to get there. So the next two books on my list, I'm actually going to combine them and talk about them together because they really do form a part one and part two. And these are from the Rich Dad Advisors series. And it's Start Your Own Corporation and Run Your Own Corporation, both by Garrett Sutton. And why everybody should read these two books is because people have a very narrow view when you hear the word corporation. You hear that and people think, oh, Fortune 500 companies, big business, that's not something for me. And what Garrett does in these two books is to show you how you can start your business, choose the right business structure for you to protect yourself about what goes on, and how all of these big corporations are making money and limiting their liabilities, limiting their taxes, and you can use the exact same strategies. So it's all about how you, as a single person, not even as a whole company, just you yourself can create your business and form a corporation and protect the money that you're earning, pay less taxes, and use these corporate strategies to build a small business and then build that small business bigger and bigger. And it's a great place to start because it is very much a textbook, and it goes through what a sole proprietorship is, what limited liability companies are, what partnerships are, and what are the pros of each form, and what are the cons of each form, and what you have to be careful of, and how to do it right. And, it's so much easier to do these things from the start correctly than it is to fix a problem because you didn't do something right early on. So I highly recommend these two books. And again, it's Start Your Own Corporation and Run Your Own Corporation by Garrett Sutton. And again, they're part of the Rich Dad Advisors series. So there's a whole bunch of Rich Dad Advisor books for legal forms and for real estate. And they're a great place to really see how you can be making more money and be more successful.
Yeah, I've written those down too. Obviously, Rich Dad Poor Dad is a great, great book,
And that's the book that started it all.
This whole thing, which is fantastic. So, going along those lines, I wrote down several books, and I think the one that I want to finish with is something that we all, if we take this to heart, we're going to make ourselves better, and we're going to make the whole world a better place. And it's the all-time classic by Dale Carnegie called "How to Win Friends and Influence People." And the bottom line is how we respond to things means everything. And with me talking about being the happiness and success GPS and saying that we own our responses, most people just automatically respond with their initial reaction to things, which is just a feeling. And their initial reaction to things, maybe to snap at somebody or to say you're wrong or this or that or whatever without even thinking about it. And what this book does is it actually teaches you to pause before you respond, and it influences you with positive ways to do things. So it's divided up into 3 sections, and each section has 6 pointers, which are just titles, which there's something that's written about each of these things. And the first one is 6 ways to make people like you. One of the simplest ways is just to smile at them and to listen to them and things like that. So that's number one. The second section is 12 ways to win people to your way of thinking. And what this does is it's treating people with respect. And the bottom line is knowing that there's a lot of good in them and that they have a lot of talents. And it makes it a whole lot easier to talk to them about something that we maybe need to correct and that kind of thing before we do that, instead of just saying, you screwed up here, you got to get this thing right. The bottom line is if you look in the mirror and you ask yourself, how would you like to be treated in situations like this? All those answers are in this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And the last section is 9 ways to change people without arousing resentment. And these are leadership principles. One of the best things to do is talk about your own problems and your own gaffes before you talk to an employee about something that's happened with them, so that you seem more human. But the bottom line is if you go online, you can actually download all these different principles. And if you print them out and you practice those, you are going to become a much better person. And I will say, it's just a blanket statement, but if the whole world practiced the principles in this book, the world would be a far better place with a whole lot less conflict. So it's How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I highly recommend you get that.
Yeah, that's a classic that's gone back decades. And it really is a great read. It's a quick read or listen. So I definitely recommend everybody, if you haven't already read that book, that's a great one to read. So we've given you 10 books to go over and read, for the rest of the summer. I do want to end on a note. The books we've chosen are all based on business, self-improvement, but just the act of reading will help change your life. It doesn't have to be a business or a self-improvement book. You can read fiction. I get tremendous relaxation, satisfaction, and I get to recharge myself reading the mystery books of, the Harry Bosch mysteries from Michael Connelly. I just recently read an autobiography from Craig Ferguson, who is a comedian and late night host. It doesn't have to be about improvement to have an improving effect on your life. So you really do want to go out and read a book. So we're just about at the end of our time. So Chip, what's your big takeaway?
Well, we talk a lot about our brain being a muscle that needs exercise just like the rest of our body. And there's no better way to exercise your brain than to read a book or listen to an audible tape, just to work on yourself. And it's something that you need to put into your life. And the more you do it, just as you said, the more you're going to grow and the better off you're going to be. So highly recommend getting into that habit, even if it's just a few minutes a day. Again, put it in your schedule and do it.
Absolutely. Listen to a book in the car, read a few pages while you're eating lunch. However you want to do the reading, just do it. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can also find us on the Apple Podcasts app, the iTunes Store, iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Google Play, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. See you then.